The winter air cut like a knife. Snow crunched under her bare feet, each step tearing skin raw. Ayanna stumbled forward, her body wrapped in nothing more than a filthy torn cloth that barely clung to her shoulders. The thin fabric was ragged, stained with dirt and blood, hanging in strips that revealed bruises blooming across her skin. Her cheek was swollen, her lips cracked, and her arm shook as she clutched the cloth to her chest. She had run until her lungs burned and until her legs gave out beneath her. Only hours ago, she'd believed in promises, words scratched in ink by a man who claimed to want at her hand, her heart, her future. Instead, she had been trapped in a cabin, his breath sour in her ear, his hands cruel and unrelenting. When she begged him to stop, he laughed. Half-blood, he spat. No man will ever want you clean. She had clawed at his face, broken free in a storm of terror, and fled into the snow. Now the cold air punished her with every breath, each gust slicing through the rags that barely covered her. She felt poisoned, shamed, unworthy of breath, unworthy of life. By the time the outline of a wooden fence loomed through the frost, her knees buckled. She collapsed onto the frozen ground, the world spinning. Her lips trembled as words scraped from her throat. "I am not clean," she whispered to the silence. "I am not clean." The steady sound of hooves broke through the stillness. A tall figure emerged from the snow, riding hard. He pulled his horse to a stop, swung down with the ease of a man who had lived his life in the saddle. His coat was heavy wool, his hat shadowing sharp eyes. James Colton froze at the sight before him. A woman barefoot, half-clad in rags, crouched in the snow like a wounded deer, her arms wrapped tight around herself, her eyes wide with fear. When his boots crunched closer, she turned her face away. "Do not look at me," she begged, her voice broken. "I'm not clean." For a long moment, there was only the hiss of wind and the creak of leather. Then James unfastened his thick coat, shrugging it from his shoulders. He bent down and draped it gently around her body. The weight of it was heavy, warm, smelling of smoke and pine. It covered her shame where her own trembling hands could not. "I do not care about dirt," he said, voice low, rough with honesty. "I see someone still alive. And that is enough." Her throat tightened. She had expected disgust, pity, or a cold command to move on. Instead, this stranger gave her dignity. A small flicker, something she thought long dead, stirred faintly inside her chest. James steadied her as she struggled to her feet, his hand firm but not unkind. Snow drifted around them, the stars swallowed by heavy winter clouds wrapped in his coat. She felt the first warmth she had known in months. Each step toward the ranch at his side felt like walking into the unknown. But for the first time since she had fled, the unknown did not terrify her. It felt almost like a chance. She did not yet know his name. She did not know if he would cast her out once he learned the truth. But as the outline of a small cabin came into view, she heard a voice high and clear drift from the porch. "Papa, who is that?" A child stood in the glow of a lantern, no older than 4, hair golden against the night, her small hands clutched a rag doll, her wide eyes fixed on the stranger wearing her father's coat. The girl tilted her head, and in a voice that carried far more weight than its size, she asked, "Do you think she could be my mama?" The words fell into the cold night like thunder, changing everything. The ranch smelled of smoke and stew, the kind of smell that clings to the walls and makes a place feel lived in. James guided Ayanna inside, his coat still draped over her shoulders. She kept her eyes down, too ashamed to meet his gaze, too scared that the little girl's innocent question would tear her apart. Emmy, barefoot on the wooden floor, tugged on her father's hand. Her small voice filled the silence. "Papa, I just want a mama," she said it plain, like she was asking for bread with her supper. Not demanding, not whining, just a simple truth from a child who had known too much loneliness. Ayana's throat tightened. She wanted to tell the girl she was not worthy, that no child should ask for a mama like her. But Emmy's eyes were wide and unblinking, waiting for an answer. James bent down, resting a rough hand on his daughter's shoulder. "We do not ask strangers for things like that," he said gently. Then he looked at Ayana, his jaw set as though he was trying to understand who she was and what storm had carried her here. For a moment, Ayana thought about lying. She could say she was traveling, that her horse had run off, that she had gotten lost. But lies never stayed hidden for long, and this man did not look like the kind who tolerated half-truths. So she spoke, her voice breaking with the weight of memory. "I came here because of a letter." Her hands gripped the edge of his coat like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "A man promised me a home, a place where I could finally belong." James did not move, only listened. Ayana forced herself to continue. "He tricked me. He touched me when I begged him not to. He called me half-blood and said no man would ever want me. I ran until I thought my lungs would burst. The fire popped in the hearth. The ranch felt too small for her shame, too tight for the truth that filled the room." Emmy tilted her head, her curls bouncing. "You ran away because he was mean." The child's words cut through the heaviness like a knife through cloth. Ayana's lips trembled. "Yes, sweetheart, he was mean." She braced herself for James to turn cold, to push her back out into the night. Instead, he poured water into a tin cup and set it in front of her. "Drink," he said. It was not pity in his voice, not anger either, just steady, quiet command. And for the first time since she fled that cabin, Ayana obeyed without fear. Emmy climbed onto her father's lap, eyes still on the stranger in their home. "Papa, can she stay just for tonight?" James said nothing at first. His gaze lingered on the bruises hidden beneath his coat. The dirt on her skin, the fire in her eyes that had not gone out completely. Then he nodded once, slow and firm. Ayana's chest rose sharply, as though she had been holding her breath since the moment he found her. She did not know it yet, but that small nod was the first crack in the walls around all three of their hearts. But what happens when a wounded woman and a guarded man try to live under the same roof with a little girl who only wants a family? The days that followed were quiet but not empty. Ayana moved like a shadow inside James's small ranch house. She cooked a little, mended a tear in an old blanket, and swept the floor without being asked. It was not to impress him. It was simply what she knew to do when given a roof. Emmy followed her everywhere. The little girl trailed behind Ayana like a puppy, asking questions about her long dark hair and the beads she kept tucked in her torn satchel. Sometimes her innocent chatter made Ayana smile, though she tried to hide it. One morning, Emmy woke with a hot flush on her cheeks. Her tiny hands trembled as she clutched her doll. James panicked. He had fixed fences in blizzards, faced down cattle thieves, but nothing rattled him like his little girl burning with fever. "I do not know what to do," he admitted, voice tight, pacing the floor. Ayana stepped forward, steady though her own heart pounded. "My father was a medicine man," she said softly. "I know what to do." James froze, watching as she pulled herbs from her satchel, crushed roots, and boiled water over the fire. Her hands were firm, her voice calm, her touch tender. As she placed a cool cloth on Emmy's forehead, she coaxed the child to sip a bitter tea, whispering in a tongue James did not know. Hours dragged by. James sat at the edge of the cot, unable to take his eyes off his daughter or the woman fighting for her. When the fever finally broke, Emmy sighed in her sleep and curled against Ayana's side as if she had always belonged there. James met Ayana's gaze across the fire. For the first time, he saw not just a stranger, not just a wounded runaway, but a woman who carried strength in her scars. Maybe you're listening now and feeling the same. That somewhere in this broken world, people like Ayana still exist. Folks who carry pain but give healing. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, do not forget to subscribe to this channel. It is the simplest way to keep these Wild West stories alive. Because what happens next is a storm neither James nor Ayana could have prepared for. A test that will ask just how much she's willing to sacrifice for a child who has already claimed her heart. The fever had passed, and for a while it seemed like the ranch had found its rhythm again. Emmy laughed in the yard, chasing after a ragged doll. James fixed a broken fence post while Jana, hung blankets in the sun. It almost felt like a family, though no one dared to say it out loud, but peace never lasted long on the frontier. The wind carried a sharp chill, and with it came trouble. One afternoon, the ranch grew too quiet. Ayana called Emmy's name, but no little voice answered. Her eyes darted to the open gate near the creek. Her heart sank. She ran, skirts flying, breath burning in her chest. Down by the water, she saw the small footprints in the mud. And then she heard it, the splash, the scream. Emmy was in the current, her small arms thrashing, her doll floating away. Hold on, Ayana cried, kicking off her shoes. The water was freezing, biting into her skin like knives. But she plunged forward, every muscle straining. Her hands reached for Emmy, fingers slipping once, twice before she caught the child and shoved her onto a rock jutting from the stream. Stay there, she gasped. Do not let go. Emmy clung to the rock, sobbing. But Ayana's ankle was trapped between two stones beneath the surface. She pulled, twisted, fought. But the pain shot up her leg. The water dragged at her body, cold and merciless. Her strength was fading fast. That was when James appeared, running hard, his boots pounding against the frozen ground. He saw his daughter clinging to the rock. Saw Ayana's limp form struggling in the current. Without hesitation, he plunged in. The icy water clawed at him, but he pulled Ayana free, then scooped Demi into his arms. Back at the ranch, he stripped the soaked clothes from Ayana's body, wrapped her in every blanket he owned, and pressed her close to his chest. Stay with me, he whispered over and over. Do not leave me now. Hours passed before Ayana's eyes fluttered open. Her lips were pale, her voice weak, but the first words she spoke were not about herself. Emmy, she rasped. She's safe, James said, his voice breaking. Because of you. Ayana closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. I could not let her go. James bowed his head, unable to find words, his rough hands trembling as they held hers. That night, as the fire burned low, James sat with Ayana wrapped in his arms, Emmy safe and warm at their side. For the first time, it no longer felt like three broken souls surviving under one roof. It felt like the beginning of a family. The morning after the storm, the ranch was quiet. Snow still clung to the roof. The creek ran swollen, and the air smelled of smoke and damp earth. Inside the cabin, Emmy lay curled between her father and Ayana. Her small hand resting in the woman's palm as though it had always belonged there. When Ayana opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was the little girl smiling at her. Can you be my mama forever? Emmy whispered. It was the same question as before, but this time Ayana did not flinch. She pulled the child close, her voice trembling. Yes, baby, if you will have me, I will. From the doorway, James watched in silence. For a man who had sworn never to open his heart again. The sight of them together was like watching winter turn into spring. Later he stood beside Ayana on the porch. The snow was falling soft and steady, and he spoke in the quiet way only men of few words can. I do not have much, he admitted. No rings, no preacher, no riches. But if what you want is a home, if what you need is not to be alone, then I have that. I have her and I want to have you too. Ayana's eyes filled with tears. But this time they were not born of shame. They were born of belonging. I do not want just a roof, she said softly. I want a family. That winter day, 3 broken souls began to heal together. Not because of promises written in letters, not because of bloodlines, but because of choices made with courage. And maybe that is the lesson. That family is not always given. Sometimes it is chosen. That the people who walk into your life at the lowest moment may just be the ones who stay forever. Do you believe that is true? Do you believe scars can lead us to the very love we thought we would never deserve? If this story touched your heart, if you felt even a flicker of hope listening to Ayana's journey, then do not forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Here we share Wild West stories that are not just about the frontier, but about the frontier of the human heart. Because who knows, the next story might be yours.